Hi guys, welcome back. Today we will be retelling the story of Moses and the freedom of Israel. The sun hung low over the rugged wilderness of Midian as Moses guided his flock through the rocky terrain. The air was dry, the wind whispering through the scattered shrubs. It was an ordinary day, or so he thought. As he led the sheep toward Mount Horeb, something caught his eye. A bush was on fire, yet its leaves remained green, its branches unburned. Moses narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. Muttering to himself, he said, "Strange, the flames are strong, yet the bush does not burn. I must see this more closely." Just as he took another step, a voice echoed from within the fire. "Moses! Moses!" Moses froze. His breath caught in his throat. The hairs on his arms stood on end. He had never heard a voice like this before, powerful yet calm, commanding yet familiar. "Here I am," he replied hesitantly. "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground." The voice echoed. Moses' hands trembled as he bent down and slipped off his sandals. His heart pounded. Who was speaking to him? Why did the fire not consume the bush? "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At these words, Moses' knees buckled. He fell to the ground, covering his face with his hands. He dared not look at the fire. "Lord," he said, whispering. The voice continued, gentle yet filled with urgency. "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries under Pharaoh's oppression. I know their suffering. And now I have come down to rescue them, to lead them to a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses remained silent, his hands still over his face. "And I am sending you, Moses, to Pharaoh. You will bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses' head snapped up. His chest tightened. "Him? Sent to Pharaoh? Who? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He said, stammering. "I will be with you, and when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship me on this very mountain." The voice replied. Moses swallowed hard. He turned his eyes toward the bush, the flames still dancing, flickering like tongues of light. "But if I go to the Israelites and tell them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me,' and they ask, 'What is his name?' What should I say?" The fire burned brighter as it responded. "I am who I am." The words echoed through the valley, resonating deep within Moses' soul. "Tell them, 'I am has sent me to you.'" Moses' mind spun. He wanted to believe, but doubts crept in. What if they do not believe me? What if they say the Lord has not appeared to you? A moment of silence passed. Then God gave him a command. "What is in your hand, Moses?" Moses looked down. His staff. A staff. "Throw it to the ground." The voice commanded. Moses hesitated but obeyed. The staff hit the rocky ground and transformed into a writhing serpent. He stumbled back in fear. "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail," he said. Moses' heart pounded. Every shepherd knew never to grab a snake by the tail. It could strike, yet something within him told him to trust. Slowly he reached out, gripping the tail, and the snake became a staff once more. Moses exhaled sharply. "If they do not believe the first sign, I will give you another." God then told Moses to put his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, his skin was white with leprosy. Moses gasped, but when he did it again, his hand was restored. "And if they still do not believe, take water from the Nile and pour it on the ground. It will turn to blood." Moses' mind reeled. The signs were clear, the call unmistakable, but still, doubt gnawed at him. But Moses pleaded, "Lord, I am not a good speaker. I have never been. My tongue is slow, my words are clumsy." The fire flared. The voice said firmly, "Who made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and teach you what to say." Moses bit his lip. He could not argue, but fear still clung to him. "Lord, please, send someone else." A deep silence filled the air. Then God's voice returned, calm but resolute. "Your brother Aaron speaks well. He will be your mouthpiece. But you, Moses, will lead my people." Moses bowed his head. He could resist no longer. The fire in the bush still burned, yet he felt a different fire now, a fire within. He would go. He would stand before Pharaoh. He would lead his people home. The sun blazed over Egypt, casting long shadows over the golden palaces and the vast Nile River. Pharaoh sat on his grand throne, draped in fine linen, his fingers adorned with gold rings. Before him stood Moses and Aaron, 2 men who had come not in their own name, but in the name of the Almighty. Moses' voice was steady, his eyes filled with resolve. "The Lord, the God of Israel, says, 'Let my people go, that they may worship me.'" Pharaoh scoffed, leaning back on his throne. "Who is this Lord that I should obey him? I do not know him, and I will not let Israel go." Aaron gripped his staff. Moses inhaled deeply. This was only the beginning. Days later, Moses and Aaron stood at the banks of the Great Nile. Pharaoh and his officials watched from a distance, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Moses raised his staff. "Because you have refused to listen, the Nile will turn to blood." Aaron stretched his staff over the water, and in an instant, the river darkened. The rich blue of the Nile became a deep, thick red. Fish writhed in agony, then floated lifelessly to the surface. The air filled with the stench of decay. Along the riverbanks, people screamed, scrambling for water, only to find that even in jars and wells, it had turned to blood. Pharaoh's eyes widened, but he quickly composed himself, signaling his magicians. They muttered incantations and, using trickery, turned a small bowl of water red. Pharaoh smirked. "Your tricks do not impress me. I will not let Israel go." The plague lasted 7 days. The people suffered, yet Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. Moses stood before Pharaoh again. "Let my people go, or frogs will swarm your land." Pharaoh refused. The next morning, chaos erupted across Egypt. Frogs poured out from the riverbanks, invading homes, beds, and kitchens. They leapt into bowls of food, croaked incessantly in royal chambers, and covered every inch of the land. Pharaoh could no longer bear it. He summoned Moses. "Pray to your God to remove them, and I will let your people go." Moses prayed, and the frogs died instantly. Their lifeless bodies rotted in the streets, filling the air with a putrid stench. But as soon as relief came, Pharaoh's heart hardened again. He would not let them go. Without warning, Moses stretched out his staff, striking the dust of the earth. Immediately, tiny gnats rose into the air, swirling like a dark cloud. They covered the skin of every man and beast, biting relentlessly. Egyptians slapped at their arms and faces, but the gnats multiplied. Pharaoh's magicians attempted to copy the miracle, but this time they failed. They turned to Pharaoh, their voices trembling. "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh would not listen. Moses returned. "If you refuse to let my people go, swarms of flies will descend upon Egypt." Pharaoh waved him off, unconcerned. The next morning, a thick cloud of flies filled the skies. They swarmed into homes, covering food, crawling into eyes, buzzing in ears. The land of Egypt was in chaos. Yet in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, not a single fly could be found. It was clear this was no ordinary disaster. Pharaoh relented, calling Moses. "I will let you go. Just make it stop." Moses prayed, and the flies vanished. But again, Pharaoh's promise was empty. The next judgment fell upon Egypt's wealth, their livestock. In one night, the cattle, horses, donkeys, camels, and sheep of the Egyptians perished. The Israelites' animals remained untouched. Pharaoh sent messengers to Goshen, desperate for an explanation. But the news was undeniable. Still, his heart was unyielding. Without warning, Moses tossed soot into the air. Immediately, painful boils erupted on the skin of every Egyptian. Even Pharaoh's magicians groaned in agony, unable to stand before him. Yet, Pharaoh refused to surrender. Moses warned Pharaoh, "If you do not release my people, a storm will come like none before." Pharaoh ignored him. Then the heavens darkened. A terrifying storm broke loose. Hail the size of fists crashed upon Egypt, mixed with fire that streaked across the sky. Trees shattered, crops were destroyed, homes were battered. Terror gripped the land. Pharaoh cried out, "I have sinned. Pray to your God, and I will let you go." Moses prayed, and the storm ceased. But Pharaoh, as before, hardened his heart. The next day, an ominous wind blew over Egypt. By morning, the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a massive swarm of locusts. They devoured every green thing left after the hail, leaving the land barren. Pharaoh could take no more. "Forgive me, take them away, and I will set you free." Moses prayed, and a strong west wind carried the locusts into the sea. But once again, Pharaoh's heart remained stone. Without warning, the sun vanished. A thick, unnatural darkness swallowed Egypt. For 3 days, no light shone. Candles would not burn. The darkness was not just seen, it was felt. Egyptians stumbled in fear, unable to move. Yet in Goshen, light still shone for the Israelites. Pharaoh, trembling, called Moses. "Go, but leave your flocks behind." Moses shook his head. "We will take everything." Pharaoh's rage erupted. "Leave my sight. If I see you again, you will die." Moses met his gaze. You have spoken truly. I will not see your face again." A final warning came. At midnight, every firstborn in Egypt will die, from Pharaoh's own son to the lowest slave. Only those who mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb will be spared. Pharaoh laughed bitterly, but at midnight, Egypt was shaken by a cry unlike any other. From the palace to the prisons, death claimed the firstborn of every house, except those of the Israelites, who were covered by the blood of the lamb. Pharaoh, grief-stricken, summoned Moses in the dead of night. His voice was hoarse, his eyes hollow. "Go, take your people, leave Egypt." And so, under the cover of darkness, the Israelites prepared to depart. The God of Israel had delivered them. Pharaoh had learned too late. No power, no kingdom, no man could stand against the Almighty. Enjoy this story. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to share. See you in the next one.